What's going on, guys? Today I'm here to bring you all 5 more tips to create better music videos. Now, this is a very old series that I did a few months back, and it needed to be revamped bad. So if you all want to check out the previous episode, click this info card right here. It's very cringy and it's old, and if you can get past the boring old me, there is some very insightful information there. But we're just gonna dive into this episode right now. The first tip that we're gonna get into to create better music videos is camera movements. Now, it's up to you, the creative director, the DP, whichever field of music video creating that you are in, to understand the different camera movements, the different types of feelings that these camera movements give off, as well as when it's going to be best to use certain camera movements over other camera movements. Now, me personally, I'm a person who creates to the music. I'm going to create to the music vibe, I'm going to create to the music feeling, I'm going to create to the music sound. Pretty much everything that has to do with music is what I'm going to basically be revolving around to determine what specific camera movements are necessary at that particular moment. So if I'm shooting a slow R&B type vibe that has, you know, just very smooth vocals, or just the sounds and the beat and everything to it is smooth, I'm gonna try to use some smooth camera movements. Now, this all doesn't have to really pertain to using the DJI Ronin or a Steadicam or a Glide camera, any of that. You can get smooth movements just off of a tripod. It's really up to you to get creative and use the different forms of equipment that you do have accessible to you. You don't wanna be that guy that has those rocky, all over the place shots, like shoulder rig and handheld shots to a slow R&B track.
I know you're saying Max is gonna catch up to me. What you doing? Said I'm just on the road right now. No, I'm not with no hoes right now. If I was, girl, you wouldn't even know right now.
And it goes vice versa to hype tracks that have a moment where the beat is going to be breaking down and it's something epic that should be happening at that moment. You want to live up to that moment. So whether it be you're shooting a super hype track or a slow R&B track, you just want to pay attention to the music, different feeling that it gives you, and just reflect that general feeling off into the camera movements that you do choose to use. Second tip that's going to help you create better music videos is to master your lighting. Now, if you're an upcoming music video director, an upcoming filmmaker, whatever field of cinematography that you are in, if you're just coming up, you're not gonna have access to the best types of lighting, the Kino flows, the RE spotlights, all of that. And in that case, it's really just best to consume natural daylight and master it for what it is. And just because daylight doesn't cost a fortune to rent out or buy, it doesn't mean that daylight isn't the most important and accessible form of lighting that there is. And you can also manipulate daylight into a lot of different ways, honestly. You can bounce natural daylight, you can diffuse it, you can block it off. And so many different forms and ways that you can utilize natural daylight. And if you have access to no other lights, it's best for you to really master daylight and use it for what it is. Now, different scenarios are gonna call for different types of lighting, as with angles, which is what we just previously talked about, but we'll use the R&B example again. So if you're shooting a slow, smooth R&B track, you're not gonna wanna have harsh lighting on your subject. You're gonna wanna have some smooth, even, soft lighting on your subject to give off that feeling of slow and smooth and pretty much all of that. So one easy way that you can do this is you can just diffuse the lighting that you do have available to you, whether that be daylight or a spotlight or LED panel or whatever it is. Just take into consideration the type of feeling that you're giving off and also reflect that exact same feeling into the lighting. If you're shooting a hype track, you might want some spotlight, some intense lighting hitting the side of the subject's face. Mastering lighting is really one of those things that's gonna take your cinematography to another level. Next tip that I'm going to talk about that's going to increase your music video value is angles. Now, me, when I go on set, I know for a fact there's 3 particular angles that I always want to get. It doesn't matter the type of song that I'm filming, it doesn't matter the feeling of the song. It's 3 standard angles that I go in and I shoot at. And I kind of evolved the entire music video set from those 3 angles. Now, when I get on set, I like to film wide, I like to film close, and I like to film medium as well. Now, these are 3 foundation angles. I always get them. Sometimes I don't even use them. Those are just good angles that I know for a fact I want to get. After I film those angles, I think about other angles that might potentially spark up the video. And I just try to get creative with the overall angles that I use. So you can film the side of someone's face, you can film someone's mouth, just mouthing the lyrics to the song. You can get a down low angle, you can get an up high angle, you can film an angle where you're moving all around. You have a steady cam, you're going in, you're coming out. You can film an angle where you're flipping, you're rolling. There's so many different things that you can do in terms of angles. It's up to you, the creative director, the DP, whichever field you're in, to get creative. Now, it's also a science between different angles and the feelings that these different angles do give off. I'm not lying, just look it up literally. Now, for instance, the down low angle that I was talking about. Now, typically the down low angle is used to give off a larger than life effect. So if you have things in frame or subject and you just want those things to feel bigger than they actually are, if you want to give those objects a little bit of power, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get that down low angle. Now, the feeling of angles is going to range widely, and it's not even just that down low angle I was talking about. If we look at the high up angle, which is basically a direct inverse of the down low angle. If you film something from above, it almost gives it a sense of being a little bit small or also lacking power, if that makes sense. It's weird, and I know I sound crazy, but literally look it up. I'm not lying. Different angles do have different feelings, and it's very important that you know what particular feeling that the angle is that you're filming is giving off. Get fun and creative with angles though. Most of the time, the crazier the angle, the more interesting it is for the viewer to watch. I specifically remember a long time ago looking at the John Lil Wayne video that Kyle and Tilly did, and he was filming it off of a crane, I think, and he was coming in with the crane, but he fully 360'd the camera while he was coming in, man. Like the impact that particular angle in that music video had on me is like, I'll never forget it, literally. Fourth tip that we're gonna get into to create better music videos is color. Now, when I say color, I know a lot of y'all are thinking color correction, and I kind of sort of do mean color correction, because color correction really does make a difference, but you can literally color coordinate a set pre-planned. Like, everything doesn't have to be in post, if that makes sense. So if you know for a fact that the track and the feeling of the track is like a very lovey, warm vibe and has that feeling to it, you can pre-plan to put those colors into the set. And it's just gonna make your life a whole lot easier when you go into post and you have to color correct. You can have the artist have on a red dress, and then you can color coordinate the whole room that she's in orange and yellow and etc. Just think about it in that way. It's easier to color colors that are already in the scene than to add them to the actual scene in post. And this is gonna work in the total opposite of things in a cold and a very moody music video set as well. If you know for a fact that you're gonna have a robbery scene in your music video and the artist has to wear a hoodie, why not tell them to wear a black or a gray hoodie instead of having them wear a bright red or blue hoodie? It's just not gonna make sense when you go to add the color into the color correction. Pre-planning the color coordination is gonna make your life a whole lot easier when you go into post and have to do your color correction and color grading. Now, color correction and color grading really does make a difference as well. You don't wanna go in and post and add a bunch of lively, warm colors to a music video that has a dark, cold, gritty vibe to it. It's just not gonna make sense. You're gonna wanna take out the saturation from those scenes, maybe even add in some blues, some really mild earth tones. You're just gonna wanna make it moody. When you go in and color, you wanna color to the actual music and the feeling that the music gives off. The fifth and final tip to create better music videos is focus. Now, me personally, I'm a person who loves bokeh, whatever you wanna call it. I love depth of field, but depth of field and bokeh can literally either make or break your video. A lot of entry-level upcoming music video directors, what they'll do is they'll get a lens that has a very low aperture on it, like a 1.8 or a 1.4. And as I said, we all love bokeh, we all love how depth of field looks. But what they'll do is, the problem that I see a lot of upcoming directors do is they'll get that lens and they'll open it all the way up to a 1.4. They'll attempt to shoot that entire video at a 1.4 just to create depth. And that's very cool, and it looks really good if you're able to keep your subject in focus for the entire time. But at a 1.4 aperture, it's just very unlikely and it's very hard to do. So here's the solution. Here's what you can do. Here is how you make this better. Of course, bokeh directly does correspond to aperture, but another thing that it directly corresponds to is focal lengths. So we're just gonna paint a hypothetical scenario here. So say you have a 24mm lens that goes all the way down to a 1.4 aperture, and you have a 24 to 105 lens over here that goes up to a 4.0 aperture. Now, if you want depth of field and you're an entry-level director, it's gonna be a no-brainer for you to choose the 24mm lens that goes down to a 1.4 aperture and use that lens to try to create some depth. Now, once again, the problem with this is it's very hard to keep a subject in focus the entire time when you're using a 1.4 aperture. A lot of the times these artists is jumping around all over the place. They're going back and forth. They're just moving. It's just hard to keep a subject in focus at a 1.4 aperture. So what you can do is you can use your 24 to 105 option. It only goes down to a 4.0. In theory, it doesn't sound like it's gonna create depth, but if you take that lens and you zoom it in a little bit, let's just say you zoom it into like 75mm or so. Even at 75mm at a 4.0 aperture, it's literally gonna separate your subject from the background so much and create so much depth. And the amazing thing about it is your subject is gonna be in focus while it's creating that depth. Think about using a higher focal length rather than a low aperture in a lot of instances where your subject is gonna be moving a lot. It's always gonna make more sense, and it's always gonna look better to shoot a moving subject at a 2.8 to a 4.0 aperture rather than at a 1.4 aperture. It's always gonna look better to have your subject in focus than to be shooting at a very low aperture and to be getting bokeh some of the time. It just looks very amateur in the video to see the subject going in and out of focus. So if you're trying to create depth, just think about increasing your focal length as well as increasing your aperture a little bit. And this is also a very important pointer to the people who really don't have access to lenses that have very low apertures. You can use that kit lens that you do have access to, that 18 to 55, that maybe only goes to like a 5.6 zoomed in at 55mm. A lot of the times the zoom will give you depth. You don't need to go down to a 1.8 all the time. That's it, guys. Those are 5 more tips to create better music videos. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop me a like, comment. Also subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Peace out, guys.